to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with roll call. June, can you do that?
Mr. Arroyo? Here. Mr. Fetter? Here. Mr. Banuelos? Mr. Martinez?
Here.
Mr. Boulanger? Mr. Martinez-Rubin? Ms. Martinez-Rubin? Here. Mr. Gallia?
Here.
Ms. Rico? Here. Mr. Cowan?
Here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Warner?
Here.
Mr. Ellis? Ms. Hunt? Ms. Rosecrans? Vice Chair Gilbert Snyder?
Here.
Chair Stutterberg?
Here. And I would like to note that I just received a text message from Mr. Banuelos, and he will be here within the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Do you guys have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum. At this point, I'd like to move to the approval of the agenda. Is there any conversation? Do I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second? Moved by Gerard, second by Mr. Martinez. Approval of minutes?
Comment. I would request that the item B4, B5, and C1 in the minutes reflect a couple of statements that summarize what those notes are about. Before, Mr. Abdallah gave a PowerPoint presentation, give us a title, give us a synthesis of what it included. B5, Mr. Garahan presented the current camp report. Let us know a summary of what the camp report highlighted or how it compared relative to the prior month, for example. And C1, Mr. Banuelos presented the attendance review. Okay, and in so doing, what came out of his presentation? That would be more informative for someone who wasn't at the meeting, and if these are going to be posted publicly for the public to know the gist of what happened. Thank you.
Maggie, Mr. Abdallah.
Well, Mr. Chair, the agenda today... Use the microphone. You can't. Hello? I might want to turn it on.
Test.
The agenda today, because of the time limitation, will be only focused on the updated status for the summer projects as well as the grand jury response.
Maggie, that wasn't the question. What Ms. Martinez-Rubin asked is for B4 to have a more in-depth review of what this PowerPoint presentation was for the program update report, as well as on B5, the capital assets management plan. She wanted a little more detail about that plan.
You got to hold the microphone up.
She was asking for a comment. She wanted more in-depth. Ms. Martinez-Rubin.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Ms. Martinez-Rubin would like to have a more informed outline of B4, the program update report as to what was covered under it, as well as a little more in-depth details for the capital assets management.
Talking about the minutes.
In the minutes.
In the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Paul?
I have a question for Norma. Would it satisfy you if the presentation and the camp report and the attendance review report were attached to the minutes?
Whatever is the easiest for whoever's involved in writing the minutes, as long as a reader recognizes or realizes what is meant by a PowerPoint presentation. At least give us a title, for example. Just 2-3 lines. What are these things about?
let the record show that board member Merriweather has arrived. Okay, any further comments on the minutes? Is there a motion?
I withdraw my motion to include the changes made by Ms. Martinez.
Okay. Seconded by Charlie Cowens. Okay. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So I would ask all board members or anyone who speaks at this meeting if we could speak into the microphone so that it is recorded. Please and thanks. Okay. Now we move to chair's report. One of the things that was asked to be brought forward in this meeting was a discussion with the board about the performance audit. And I think that this is actually an important thing. I would like it to be incorporated into our next joint meeting, or it should be something of a standard in the mid-year meeting with the board so that we can look at what the audit says and what actions are being taken to correct that. You know, it's a good conversation. One of the things that happens with our discussions with the board is that we have 1 hour. Personally, I think we could have a longer meeting because I think that this discussions could go more into depth about what we're doing as a committee and what the board is doing on their own. I think it would foster a better relationship between the two organizations, and it would go further to inform the public about what we're doing and the good things that we're doing. That being said, I would also like to move to some CBOC business, and that would be the election of officers. Tim and I finish our stint at our 2-year term as chair and vice chair in September. Normally, as our bylaws state, we would hold an election 2 months before the turnover of staff, so that there would be time for the incoming chair and vice chair to understand how the chair and vice chair actually work within the committee. But we were limited to this time due to the fact that in the last 2 months we've now had 4 board meetings. Every time we have a board meeting, we lose the ability to have staff present at the meeting to answer our CBOC questions. So what we will be doing is in the next meeting in September, we will hold election for chair and vice chair, and they will assume the chair and vice chair position in the October meeting.
Can you pass the mic? So raise your hand so if you want to speak, then they can pass it.
Alex?
Thank you. So when is the meeting going to be in September?
Our next September meeting, I believe, is third week of September.
Okay.
That's something I should find out. I believe that is. I'm glad to be sitting here once again with the board. Once again, we tried to meet in June. Here we are, beginning of August. I think that once again, the actions of the state really force our hand in the board's hands in how we deal with joint meetings. And as we know, the financial situation of the state doesn't allow us to actually run smoothly. So here we are. I look forward to going forward. That's it for my chair's report. I'd like to move to item B4. And first I'd like to take public comment. Is there public comment? Or B1, please. There's public comment from Anton Hemder. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Anton Ham here. I'm a former member of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. The district's Citizen Bond Oversight Committee is not independent as required by law. Prop 39 requires an oversight committee with at least 7 members. 5 of these members are legally required to be nominated by their representative category. Business organization member is a required legal category. That position is currently vacant. The senior citizen organization member is a required category. That member was not nominated by a senior citizen organization. It is required by law. The taxpayer organization member was rejected by the board in an illegal parliamentary procedure. Each board member appoints 1 member to the CBOC as their personal representative. These 5 members dilute the independence of the 5 legally required members, and it is a conflict of interest. How can you have an independent bond oversight committee when each board member can appoint their personal representative to oversee bond expenditures? The district CBOC is the only committee in California where each board member appoints their personal representative to the committee. The district has placed a new Proposition 39 bond issue in the amount of $360 million on the November 2012 ballot. Taxpayers should not depend on the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee to effectively oversee the expenditures of these new bond funds. The CBOC is not independent and does not provide effective oversight. The Contra Costa County Grand Jury issued a report in June 2012 on the operation of 9 CBOCs in the county, including our district. This report made 12 recommendations. This is a report that's on the agenda tonight and that you have before you. Penal Code Section 330.05 requires the district to respond to the grand jury recommendations by August 21st, 2012, a couple of days from now. In my opinion, the CBOC should participate in the drafting of this response to the grand jury recommendations. Therefore, I recommend that the district request an additional 90 days to respond to the grand jury recommendations so that the CBOC can participate in the drafting of responses to the 12 grand jury recommendations. One more second.
Please conclude your remarks.
We'll give Madam Chair.
Penal Code Section 933.05 provides for a 90-day extension to reply to grand jury reports.
All right. So at this time, I'd like to move forward into this discussion with the CBOC. Mr. Cowens.
Oh, I just have a time management question. I mean, since we have a limited amount of time, would it make sense to allocate a certain amount of time to discuss this topic so there's room left for the facilities program update?
Yes.
How long do you think it should go?
I'll give us 20 minutes easily. Okay? So, Bill, Mr. Fay, would you like to start with the grand jury report?
So staff has been working on the response to the grand jury. It is broken up into actually 2 sections where they come out and make findings and then they come back and make recommendations. The recommendations are a duplicate of the findings. They make a statement, we respond to the statement, and then in the recommendation, we respond to the recommendation. So we'll move as expeditiously as possible. We are here to get CBOC input before we draft the final to send out to the grand jury. Mr. Abdallah everybody has a copy of the letter that was sent to the district. Mr. Abdallah will move to the findings and then discuss what staff believes the answer to those findings, and we're looking for comment by the members of our CBOC.
It's my assumption that you've all read this. I mean, we've had this report for 2 months now, I believe. You were given it, you were given a full copy of it in our last meeting, and it was moved forward to this meeting so that we could have an educated discussion about it. So I hope that everybody's read it. Does anybody have questions? Can we open this discussion? Mr. Ramsey?
Well, there needs to be, if you look at background on page 2, there needs to be correction. It's incorrectly amount. So we have bond amount of $1,270,000,000, not $1,230,000,000. So
Say that number again.
they, for whatever reason, they decided not to include Measure E. Measure E was our first bond that we passed in 1998. So,
Mr. Carroll, is it possible, because if that wasn't a Prop 39 bond, maybe they're only counting the Prop 39?
no, they're not, because Measure M wasn't a Prop 39 either. So the first two were under the 2/3 requirement of Prop 13 for $40,150,098,2,000. But the 2002 going forward for 300, for 400, and then for 380, were all Prop 39 bonds. So they include a non-Prop 39 bond in this balance. So the total bond amount, I just want to make sure that it's accurate, $1,270,000,000. So I just want to make sure it's about it.
Charlie?
Oh, I have a quick question about the process. This is according to this information that Anton was bringing up. This was due August 21st. Is there a requirement that the board itself approve or adopt the report before it goes on to the county grand jury? And then the second part of that is, have you prepared some drafts of what your responses would be to some of these recommendations yet?
Well, the answer to that question, yes, it is in the working draft. I'm very much close to be completed with it. Will be ready to be sent out on the 21st as it's been requested.
The question was, does it have to be approved by the board? There's two parts to the question. And that is, do you have a draft? It doesn't need to be approved by the board before it goes to the grand jury.
So practice by the cabinet does not have all grand jury responses approved by the board. They come to the staff, and the staff sends the responses out.
So if I'm understanding this, you don't have anything for us to actually comment on today regarding responses to the grand jury report?
So we are going to talk about our responses and then solicit your opinions about those responses.
Okay. At this point, then, can we start walking through that in your response? Can we start at the beginning and know what you want to, what you have responses to already?
Well,
and I'd like to recognize Mr. Ramsey.
Yeah, I do, because if you look at page 3, I'd like, if they're going to make comments, to at least recognize that we also have, although not legally required, that we're also a district that has an oversight committee for the parcel tax expenditures. I think it's important to just reference that we have that as well, because I think it's important that it be identified when we have a high level of transparency within our district financial programs, and that we take it seriously, and that we do. And then on page 8, if you look at the report on the paragraph for West County's performance on the range, I thought it was more than 165 pages. I might be wrong there. On page 8, it says, for example, West County's performance audits include mid-year audits for comprehensive scopes and range up to 165 pages. So I just want to make sure that that's accurate, because I thought it was more. That's pretty extensive as it is. And I would like to know and reference what is an average. We saw the Mount Diablo, which is very skimpy in what they were doing in terms of their audit, so people have some context to what our audit performance audit is relative to what they're seeing out of other things. To commend West County for that just stuck out for me after I read the document.
Mr. Cowles. Oh, yeah, that's a question that I had, sort of, is that they talk about, we have a certain kind of performance audit we've done. A lot of this report actually is kind of, we're actually doing the things that they're talking about. Right. They didn't broadcast it to a specific district, so they wouldn't commend the district directly. But as far as the performance audit, they mentioned in here the switch to the yellow book format for an audit where, and that seemed kind of that's an issue that I would look for some further clarification on, because at the same time they're saying that the Bond Oversight Committee should be more involved in setting the scope for the audit. And so I would like to see some kind of discussion about how, to me, my understanding of the yellow book process is that means that instead of agreeing upon, doing an agreed upon procedures audit, that you actually have certain set guidelines that you follow in the audit. So that seems kind of inconsistent to me at first with the idea that the Bond Oversight Committee or the board would actually be defining the scope. So I don't know, does that make sense to you? Norma.
I find it really hard to hear or clearly because of the acoustics here, and I think it's going to continue that way. So I would like to say at this point that if we could get the draft, whatever version you have at this point, staff, for us to actually take a look through and thoughtfully be able to comment, that would make your report so much better, because you would have thoughtful comments from the CBOC members rather than trying to decipher here who's saying what because of the acoustics. They're really poor, and I think you would acknowledge that.
Yeah, staff, I'd also like to request that your response be emailed to all committee members so that we can see it and then be able to discuss it at our next meeting.
Did people hear my comments? Did you hear me taking notes?
I say this as we're at 6:22, 23, and I have us turning over in another 10 minutes. So I want to make sure that we move through this and that we're clear on what we're doing.
Through the chair.
So my response is that if we start on page 9, you can see all the issues that we're dealing with here and what our response would be. And I think that it would be that it's doable that we take notes of that and move forward, because I cannot produce a report right now.
No, what I'm saying is you are going to produce a report.
Yes.
It will be mailed on time.
Yes.
From what you're saying.
Yes.
I would like all of the members of the CBOC to receive that response so that we can look at it and then we can have a further discussion at our next meeting. Seems how if we receive it before it's sent, we should be able to write you and have a response to you. Whether you agree with our response or not, that's not my issue.
Okay.
I want it to get to us so that we can actually view the document and understand it, because we're given a very short time to have a complex discussion about something we don't have in front of us. If we have the material in front of us, we can take it up at a further meeting.
Absolutely. I can do that.
I recognize that, and then Mr. Collins.
I'd like to at least have a brief conversation about item recommendation by the grand jury on page 10, which is relative to the public website. And I was made chair of the public website when John Dawsney finished his term. And on April 18th, I itemized for everyone, and I've given a copy of this to Mr. Fay and Mr. Abdallah, of the shortfalls, the shortcomings of the website. It seems ironic to me that if part of our charge is to communicate to the public and the website isn't effective, and the public has no means by which to communicate with us. Not only that, as they note here, the websites are required to be maintained and not always timely or complete. And that is definitely the case with our website. So I would strongly suggest that as part of your report back and your recommendations, that you make some changes to the website, the way it's maintained, the way it's been done, because it's not providing service to the public. You go on there, everything is old, nothing's been updated, the links are dead, and we're not doing what we can do to make it better. Thank you.
Mr. Counts?
Oh, thank you. And one thing I would like to bring up too is that there is that option to actually ask for a continuance, sort of, for responding to this grand jury report. There you can add an additional 90 days if you ask for it in time. And so maybe that would be something for the staff to consider. That way you would actually include the input from the Bond Oversight Committee as part of the report. But one way or another, I also want to, as part of since we are getting feedback on the report now in our 10 minutes that we have, that I'd like a lot of attention to be paid to the whole issue of maintaining the membership that we have and measures to try and hold on. This report looks at it more in terms of how you recruit people, talking about going out to certain organizations, but the issue that I see a lot is a retention issue. And one thing that I would suggest as something that you could add as a response would be that we should actually have some kind of exit interviewing process to find out why people don't stay on the committee. So not judging whether their reasons are good or bad, but just as information that might be helpful. I mean, what I suspect is that people have a different image of what this committee is when they join it than it turns out to be, and that, but you could flesh that out or find out that it's something else. So I would like to recommend some kind of exit interviewing process. Thanks.
I just want to say as chairman that over the years I've seen our membership stay pretty stable. A lot of the people who do sign on the committee serve 2 full terms. Charles.
I agree with the comments made about taking advantage of the extension. I think it's important to provide the committee an opportunity to give their impressions or thoughts, for us to give our impressions and thoughts, because once it's submitted, it becomes the final document and we want to do it right. And so this is our first real cut at it. So I think if we can take advantage of that additional 90 days, like Mr. Younger had stated, that's something we should do. I think it's a good idea. So that's just my own 2 cents, just to pass it on to staff, because it's their decision administratively.
Mr. Thurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is just about the format of the findings. As I'm looking through it, findings appear to be generalized to all districts and not specific to West Costa. And as so, if there's going to be an extension, it seems to me that we would want to ask for specific places or specific examples where we have not met one of the findings or one of the recommendations. For example, on the website, it's interesting, I appreciated your comments, and I think we can always do better, but in the body of the report, they cite West Contra Costa as doing a good job of actually posting notices. So to ask us and all the other districts to generally respond to every finding and every recommendation without specifics about where we have not met a finding seems to me a poor exercise. But to say, would you give us an example of where our website does not meet muster? Give us an example where we have not informed the community well enough about how you can be nominated to be on the CBOC. To get those kinds of specifics so that our response will be a catered and specific response.
And may I respond to that, Mr. Thurman?
Yeah, and then I recognize you, but Eduardo had his hand up first.
I do have a report, which I have provided 4 months ago to staff. And they list exactly what I'm speaking of. And yes, we have a website and it's up and running, but it's not effective. And I think those are the changes that I'm addressing.
Mr. Martinez.
You see I was not advocating for the website or any aspect. Just generally that we would get specifics like what you produced from the grand jury or their staff, however they provide that. So we're not just guessing at what it is that they want us to speak to. Thank you.
The grand jury report seems to be a chance for us to have introspection, to see exactly what it is we're doing well, what it is we need to improve on. And we can use their recommendations as a guideline as to what to look at. So that's why I agree with Mr. Younger in terms of needing more time for us to actually look at all the specifications and see how we can improve.
Mr. Cow.
I just wanted to point out that this report, and this is kind of going along with what other people are saying, that it's not really a slam of Bond Oversight Committee. I like the title of it. It doesn't say horrible job being done by Bond Oversight Committee. It says raising the bar. So I think we should take that into advisement that this is really the beginning of an opportunity for improvement, not for trying to judge one Bond Oversight Committee versus another, and we should take advantage of that.
Mr. Fetter.
Bill, are you having trouble answering any of these requests? By the way, there are actually two parts to this, and that is the problems and the recommendations. Are you answering both sets or just the recommendations?
We are answering both the findings and the recommendations as prescribed by, because this is kind of a legalese, and so on the findings that are general that don't apply to us, there's three categories of answers that we have to answer, and so we say we don't agree with your findings, relative to us, and then we go through and list the certain things. So.
And you're doing this with the assistance of counsel, I assume?
Yes, and so the members have had this correspondence for a couple months. It is posted on the website, and so I would submit that since you already have all of the information, that before our next meeting that you go through and put everything in writing, and then we can just pull it together and then send it out as a report.
I guess what I was getting at was, are there any items that you're having difficulty responding to?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Rams.
Yeah, one that I hope staff will highlight, which I find on page 9 of the finding very troubling, because this is a practice that's seen done by school districts around the state, and they don't get paid. For bond proceeds, or I don't like the word sometimes, but bond proceeds are used to provide general fund relief in various ways, which even if legal may not always have been fully disclosed to voters in the ballot line. I think that needs to be really addressed, because I think it's an abuse of taxpayers who are approving these bonds to be used on capital improvement projects, not on projects, or as a way to borrow money in their general fund and say they'll be repaid within 12 months. And there's districts around the state who've been in that practice, and there's no consequences. So I think it's important to emphasize we've never done that we don't plan to do that. And if there are districts that have done that, they need to be identified. They don't identify those districts, because I think if they want to raise the bar in the report, they need to show abuses where they exist.
Further discussion, Mr. Madrano.
I believe I'm the only member of the school board and was previously on the Bond Oversight Committee that served on the grand jury of the county. Am I right?
Grand jury, but Ms. Cronenberg was a member of the CBOC.
Not the grand jury.
Not the grand jury.
Not the grand jury.
When the new grand jury is impaneled in July, they will look at all the reports that come in, as how many they sent out. They'll be reviewed by a select committee of the grand jury, and they will report and say, page 9 is flawed in article number 7, send it back. So they have that authority to do that. But it's always the new grand jury with maybe 1 or 2 of the old members. So they have that authority. They will read everything and see if you've answered the questions correctly. And if you haven't, they will get back to you. We did that in the 2 years I was on the grand jury, 1 year when I was chairperson.
It's 6:35 at this time. I would like to know if there's any further questions. If there are, I'll give you the floor for a moment, and then Norma.
Do we need a motion to summarize the discussion or request that we've made of staff?
Yes, we do.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So the meeting is scheduled to go to 7:20. And
we are fully to 7:20.
Yeah, it's just scheduled to go to 7:20. And
I won't give this topic another 10 minutes.
And our engineering report is about 10 minutes, and so we could fully
Okay, great.
use
Then
it.
let's take this all the way to 7 o'clock. We have that discussion. We have open till 7 o'clock. That gives us another 25 minutes. Norma.
So working backwards, what is your deadline to request for the 90-day extension? That's one question, and to staff. And the other is, once the deadline, once the extension is available, what is the deadline? And working backwards, so we can start talking about a timeline, so we can anticipate. That as CBOC members, we also make time to read through the materials as needed and give you input in writing as you request it, and then you allow you some time to incorporate that.
As the deadline was just brought up 10 minutes ago, I don't know what the timing to request that, and so I can go and look for that. In a 90-day window, I would suggest that we start presently to go through the findings and go through the recommendations, and for everybody to jot down their comments, and I would suggest that Mr. Stuttaford agendize this for the next meeting.
Can I ask a question then,
Mr. Rosen?
Were there districts that were excluded on purpose from this? Were there districts that the oversight committees were not part of the grand jury process they were reviewing? Because I don't know why San Ramon's not listed as part of governing board if you look on page 1. San Ramon has a big bond program that's not listed, so I didn't know if there was some reason for that or not. But I'm not going to include it.
Mr. Cove.
Oh, no. It's not a problem. Is it possible that San Ramon didn't use Prop 39?
Yeah, it's Prop 39.
Oh, so you're not sure?
I'm just saying it's not listed.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know if they were excluded for some reason, were they given an exemption?
Yeah, I guess we should find out. It's probably because it's not this is for bond oversight committees for Prop 39. So
Yeah, but it's a Prop 39 bond that they passed.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that. Okay.
So I'm just curious why they weren't listed.
Go ahead. Elaine.
I just had a question for Mr. Fay, because I know when you respond, you said you responded to the findings and the recommendations.
Yes.
Okay, because I see a lot of the recommendations are things that we can comply to. So in that response, would you be
Yes,
know that?
we would respond that we have implemented
Right,
what the
that's
recommendations
what
are.
Yes.
And then we would really paraphrase what we've indicated in the findings. And so they're kind of a duplicate. They make findings and then they recommend that you adopt their findings.
Right.
And so it's a dual process that we go through to do that.
I recognize Paul.
I would like, it sounded like you had something to actually go over with us from start to finish here. We keep interrupting and we haven't heard yet what it is that you've prepared or put together already. So I would like to hear that. I don't really like this idea of all of us submitting our thoughts on this because that's kind of like having 15 or 20 people respond to the report. It sounds like you've done some work. I'd like to hear what you've done, what your thoughts are, and then maybe we can respond to that or respond to what's already been prepared.
We're happy to do that format. Mr. Abdallah will take the mic.
Mr. Chair, member of the Bond Oversight Committee, Mr. Ramsey, member of the board, just to make it very quickly in the sake of time, like Mr. Fay have address, there's two issues we need to respond to, the finding and the recommendations, and both of which somewhat duplicates. As far as the finding, just in a nutshell, out of the 16 findings we were supposed to respond to 15, we believe that we agreed to 4 out of the 16. We happen to disagree with the rest of them. I can go over them one by one and tell you our response if you would like me to.
Yes.
We have the time. You know, we have another. You can go right through. We got 20 minutes here. We can rock and roll.
Let's do it. Go.
I'll make it very quickly then. We do believe the first finding that it is a great idea that the grand jury put this together, and for the betterment of our process, so that was an agreement on. The ballot language that overly general in item number 2 and identifying a specific scope and a specific projects. Yes, we do agree with that some of the ballot language it's kind of vague, but when it comes down to our operation here, there is a list of the projects, and the list of the projects is attached to one part of or the bond language that we have. For example, if you go down on the website, and actually it's very easy to find. You go down to bond language for Measure M, you'll find an attached list of project very specifically, and it describes and say if it was a reconstruction or renovation modernization. So there was an agreement to number 2. Like Mr. Ramsey said, it is not our practice, neither should be anybody's practice to use bond fund to relieve the general fund. So in point number 3, we are agreeing to the fact that it's illegal to do so, and this is not our practice. Bullet number 4, when it talks about the inherent conflict of interest, selecting board members in some cases and having the power to remove them without a cause. I found it very hard to agree with it. To the contrary, we are disagreeing to that comment because of the fact it is in our bylaws that the only sole purpose of dismissing a member is for an excessive, unexcused absence. And it is in our meeting agenda every week to review the absence stats. And not only that, it is very clear, and again, I remember we had a whole meeting talking about the word shall act or should act. It is a recommendation from the committee that will either act on dismissal or not. And there was quite a bit of process how to dismiss the member and why. And it was explained in so much details by Mr. Chair that the emails and the calls and the letters he sends. And after all said and done, the recommendation goes to the board for approval. So I find it hard to believe it to talk about inherent conflict of interest, because that's not the common practice, and it's not the common practice of this committee. Bullet number 5, we'll be talking about the district do not consistently reach out to legally mandated organizations to look at professional association. I also find it hard to believe how to agree with it. This is one of the also points that we have a huge disagreement with. Because of the fact, at the time where the Prop 39 mandate 5 positions will look at us. We have 18 members in the board, and our membership is very healthy, and it is attracting a lot of new members, which we just had 5 on for the last few months. I understand that I know Dr. Carter does a whole lot of outreach, because we talk about it here and there. There is on the website yet again a very easily user-friendly button that says join the team. Join the CBOC team. And you click on it, you get the application, the minute you fill it, it's going to go directly back to Arthur, Mr. Chair. So not reaching out is really an understatement. There's quite a bit of work done behind the scenes. If you doubt it, look at us. We have 16 members and it's growing. Point number 6, which talks about it's not always appear to be consistent transparency, transparent process in interest a person to be nominated and apply for and appointed. And again, our disagreement based on the fact that we have a representative from the senior citizen, we have a representative from the parents organization, we have a representative from the business organization. We actually recently had a representative from the taxpayer association. So we are very well represented here at the effort that's been made. Going to point number 7, when we talk about we are not providing consistently providing timely, adequate, and independent training or resources material for the members. I find it very hard for any organization to operate this way. To the contrary, we do have our orientation meeting, and we just finished our orientation for the newest 5 members in our board. And there was a specific, we had handouts, and I'm very proud to say the handout, there were at least 3 out of the 5 or 6 recommended. We hand out the Coalition of School Housing Property United Best Practice. We hand out a copy of our bylaws. We hand out a copy of the Brown Act. And as far as the orientation meetings that I've made, there was a specific training on how to do the financial report. I didn't do it. I had our cost analyst sit with the new members and explain to them how to read the AMP report, what to look for, where the numbers should match. So we have gone to a huge extent of time and effort to orient our new members. And not only that, few meetings ago, we had a general training about the Brown Act. We have had a constant, a stand-alone item on our agenda, month after month after month. It's item called Construction 101. We talk about change order, we talk about accounting, we talk about scheduling, we talk about the program overall. It is a mandated report. It's in the agenda, never change. When we give the whole board the status of the project, of what we have, what kind of problem we have. We've had a huge discussion last meeting, Mr. Chair. If you remember about the trash being installed. We had a good discussion with Jason about our compliance with the local hiring. This committee is very up on the bar and is very active, and I'm very proud to be a chairman of it. Well, if we go down to number 8, we're talking about the bylaws do not appear to include or take into account best practices. You know, I don't think we ever wrote that. Never read our bylaws. If you read our bylaws, it's very specific and it's very much in details. And my hat is off to all the effort that Don Ghazi made before he left in getting our bylaws done and approved. Because I remember discussion after discussion after discussion, and we got started in the work shaft. So there's a lot of quite a bit of efforts been made, and I am proud of it. You should. Public works staff required to be maintained by district for their bond oversight. I have to disagree with that. Although if I have some notes for improvement, I would like to have a copy of it. I have not heard you talking about it for 4 months, actually, but I'm going to have to take.
That's not correct. She's brought that up many times.
Can't hear you.
Yvette has brought forward to the committee and to staff her concerns about the website at each meeting and in several emails. So, carry on.
So, yeah, I'd like to chime in about the website. So we have made incremental changes. We haven't gotten to everything that Yvette has written down, but we have had our webmaster or our cost analyst go in and make some changes to the website. And to the extent possible, we'd like to make it a little bit more intuitive, to where when you hit the button to become a member, it not only brings up the application, but it brings up the membership, and it brings up the vacant things. And so it is kind of like a one-stop shopping instead of having to go to different buttons to get the information. So I think that our website is informative. We do have a challenge to keep everything up and current, and we are focused on that, and we're making incremental changes to make that happen. And I'd be happy to report that in the next meeting on the things that we have taken care of.
Thank you, Mr. Fay. Going down to bullet number 10, we talk about website yet again and posting agendas and meeting. And there's no secret here we've been religiously posting the agendas. And lately we've been posting the agenda with an automatic link to the minutes, to the camp report, some other attachment on the agenda, and we post this minutes at least 96 hours ahead of time. It works for us because we post it by Friday, and we have our meeting on Wednesday, so we have at least 5 days before. And I remember not too long ago, Mr. Chair canceled the meeting because there was a correction made to a meeting agenda that happened to be posted less than 72 hours. Going back to number 10, number 11, talking about the financial reports furnished to the Oversight Committee by the district are not always complete and comprehensive enough to allow meaningful, effective review and oversight. Happy to disagree with that too, because we have our audit subcommittee, and I remember Mr. Gandhi before he left. His subcommittee sat down and talked about the scope, talked about the cost, talked about what we expect to see, and when we got the draft report, he did not like it, sent it back for some more corrections and more addition. So I see that the audit subcommittee is very involved in this process here. When we talk to bullet number 12 about the financial data, reports are not always furnished to the Oversight Committee. I totally disagree with that. It is religiously provided to the subcommittee every single meeting, a copy of the camp report. We go over it and we go over changes if there's any, and we open to answer any questions. It's been very transparent and nothing different. We're talking about districts do not typically offer their Oversight Committee an opportunity to provide inputs into defining the scope and the context of the district's required annual performance audit. That's again, it's not true because the audit subcommittee have the input. And I remember last year we had all to review the audit report and agreed to recommend or accept the overall report. There's quite a bit of discussion there. So nothing really, nothing is happening to behind the scenes. Talking about the annual report that is required to be issued by the Bond Oversight Committee, not always timely and very significant, varies significantly in their style and scope. I have to disagree with that, although I'm gonna address what Mr. Thurman have talked about earlier. we have not identified what style or what scope does it look like for us to see or to say we agree or disagree with. But our annual report by the Vice Chair is been done every year. It's been shared with the committee. And we've been provided the information. So what style I cannot comment on, what scope I cannot comment on, but it comments on the overall operation of the facility of the committee. Last but not least, although it's not legally required, the parcel tax, some districts have provided orders with details of projects list, the ballot material, and Mr. Ramsey have addressed that earlier today, and he said, and we drive the fact that even though it's not required for the sake of transparency, we do provide and have that on. This is as far as quick access I can go for, as far as the finding. As far as the recommendation, if you have time, I'll be more than happy to visit. Otherwise, that will be up to Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Costa? Okay. Okay, then let's do the recommendations now.
Okay, as far as the recommendation, number one, we talk about the district balance language should inform order of all intended use of the funds, specific projects, at schools, and goes on and on. And our answer to that, the recommendation is implemented. And again, like I said earlier, if you go to the website and click on the bond language, you will see the list of projects and a specific description of these projects, modernization, new construction, what have you. We're talking about the district should disclose and explain in the valid language if and what in any way the bond fund will be used to provide general fund relief. It is agreed to implement it. We do not adopt this practice in our general fund specifically.
So one thing that the staff was talking about is when you build a high efficiency school and you put photovoltaic panels on the school, there is a benefit to the general fund, but that is just the process of building a 21st century school. And we didn't feel that that was relevant here, because I think that, as Mr. Ramsey talked about, that they are talking about districts that go in and use a bond fund to shore up to short-term
deficiencies in the general fund. That's sort of inaccurate. All things improve the general fund if you have better lighting, better heating, better ventilation systems. So even if you put a photovoltaic system on a facility, it's just part of the improvement of the facility that you're doing. We're not doing it for the intended purpose of trying to create relief to the general fund. So I want to make that perfectly clear. There's a huge distinction between, and as a matter of fact, if you look at Hercules, where we have installed the solar panels under that grant that we got, it has not created these huge savings that everybody's talking about, because it's just too, because when you get a new school, you have more square footage, there's more use. So what we're finding is there's more that's being used, so you're actually not seeing these huge savings, because you go from a 40,000 square foot elementary school to a 70,000 square foot elementary school. It has more capacity, they're using more, so it might not be costing more, but what you were paying is what you're still paying now.
I recognize
that is very true.
I recognize Gilbert Snyder and then Mr. Cowan.
I just have a real quick question. If we did not have bond funds for construction, could we not use, if we had money in some other world, if we had money in our general fund, couldn't we use our general fund money to build a building?
Yeah.
So this is really one of those questions that to me seems really kind of bizarre. I mean, we have to build buildings. If we didn't have a bond fund, we would have to raise money and put it in the general fund to build a building. So our response to this, I would think, is this relieves our general fund from having to be used for constructing buildings. We're passing these bonds to construct buildings. So our response is we will not have to use our general fund to construct buildings.
I feel like we're running out of time. I'd like to request that we get through all the recommendations and then do the comments.
Thank you.
Well, you're actually out of time at 7 o'clock right now. What you're not going to do is you're not going to do the.
They need 10 minutes for their.
Well, we're going to have comments on it, and there's public comment.
I'll skim through it 2 minutes, Mr. Chair. Number 3 and 4 talks about the recruitment again, and the only thing I can say to that, it is been implemented. Our membership is very healthy, and we have covered all the areas that's been required for Prop 39 to be covered. Number 5 talks about the candidate, the Oversight Committee should submit written applications listing background and qualification. If you look at the application that every member fill in for approval, it speaks just for that, and actually will require to attach a resume. District should make available to committee members consideration certain kind of a list of documents. We do provide very similar documents to that. We do provide the Prop 39 Best Practice Handbook. We do provide the Brown Act Handbook, and we do provide a copy of our bylaws. I will entertain the thought to do some research about the other items they are recommending. I do not know if it's going to be helpful to our process or not. If it is, I'll have to bring it up for your approval. Going down to recommendation number 7, that the district should ensure that the website for their oversight committee is prominently displayed on their homepage, which yes, it is, easily navigatable, which is, in my opinion, it is. If this some improvement, would be more than happy to address them and make it better for everybody. But the site, the way it is, it's very easy, very user friendly. Go up to, I think I skipped one here. Number 8, the district should provide oversight committee with a complete, detailed, comprehensive financial data relating to bond expansions and revenue. And we discuss this every month. We discuss this with the revenue sheet, with the expenditure sheet, with Mr. Ramsey is so big on bringing up the bond sales and keep us posted with the eligibility and the state funds in a very consistent manner. District should provide financial data and reports to the committees. It's redundant. We do provide that. District should offer the bond oversight committee the opportunity to provide inputs in defining scope and the context of the required annual performance audit, which we do that. That's the responsibility of the audit subcommittee. District annual independent performance audit should be detailed. Again, it's redundant, and the subcommittee have their inputs in that. District should request its oversight committee issue timely, comprehensive, and informative reports. This talks about two folds. One of them speaks to the annual report, one of them speaks of a report that needs to be processed when the committee involvement gets resolved because of the end of the bond program. We haven't reached that yet, and I hope we won't reach that anytime soon because we're going after a new bond and we need your support. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to take questions, brief ones, and then we'll move on. Go, Mr. Collins.
Oh, I just have a general suggestion. I mean, I have other comments that I'll send separately as part of our process for reviewing this, but one thing that struck me when you were going through the findings is that they're targeting all the school districts. So they actually mention us as people who are doing these things in the preamble. So when you say that not agree for the findings, make sure that they haven't said somewhere else in the report that we're doing fine in that area. I know performance, they pointed out that our performance audits are not skimpy, and they also said that our training was good. So in our responses to those things, we should make sure we reflect that they said that we were doing okay.
You're right.
Any further comment? Eduardo.
I think we should just leave out agree, disagree, and just make statements to the issues as they are.
So in the preamble to the letter, that is the legal way they want us to respond. They only give us 3 ways to respond: either agree or disagree, or we agree and we're making the changes. So it's just a perfunctory answer.
Okay. All right. And one other question. It says number 2 in findings, it says valid language fails to indicate priorities. So I was wondering if, and I know that in former bonds we have listed things that we wanted to do with the bond funds, but in the implementation, we kept changing our priorities. So I was wondering if in this new bond we have listed priorities and whether or not we're going to stick to the priorities listed.
Well, it is our practice to produce a project list, and the project list is not done with any priorities, and the facility subcommittee sets those priorities. And so the project list names the school, it gives a budget, a current budget that we think that it's going to take to execute the work that we want to do, and then the facility subcommittee comes back and issues the priorities. And it really has to do with a function of design, because some of our designs are already underway, and so those are the projects that we can get out. I know during this last intervening period of time that since the bid market, the bid climate was so good, we rushed to get as many projects on the street as we can, so we could take advantage of that situation.
Right, I understand that, but it says that the valid language fails to indicate priorities, so that seems to be a failing that we've had in the past. And my question is, will we indicate priorities in terms of which project will be first, which project will be second, which project will be third in terms of priorities?
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The way that we develop our valid language, because as I understand, there's only so many words that you can put on a page in terms of that, is we have an attachment of a project list. And so it's just a different approach. The grand jury is finding and recommending that we take that approach, but we approach it in a different way, and it still has the same effect.
Okay, at this time I need to end this discussion and move to the engineering officer's report. And I would, before that starts, I'd also like the record to reflect that Chris Rosencrantz is here as a member. Please and thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Ramsey, Dr. Harder, I am going to the engineering report pretty quick for the sake of the time. I focused this report today and focused specifically on the projects we put out during the summer. One of our projects that must be done before the student comes back. Thank you. Before the student comes back, it was Dover Elementary School Mr. Fay have really put his neck out, and he made a promise to the site that we will do so. Quite a bit of progress. This is the kindergarten playground area. This is the kindergarten, the preschool.
Because I didn't see the first slide. What was the first slide? Went right too quick.
This one?
No, all the way back. The very original. One before that. Yeah, what?
This is just the introduction to the report, Mr. Ramsey. This is the multi-purpose room in building in the back with playground equipment. Picture shows the same in the process of putting the playground equipment together. This is the kindergarten and the preschool area. The multi-purpose building with the curtains and the process of final cleaning. Finished and delivered. Just show you the picture of what the floor looked like. This is Pierce, the dental clinic, which we have made quite a bit of strides to get it complete, which will be complete in the next couple of weeks. Now they are in the process of installing the equipment. As you see, the floor is complete. Going to Nystrom, which one of the big projects we had, it was a huge rush to finish Nystrom. What you look at right now is the new multipurpose building for Nystrom and the new playground equipment for the temporary housing. This is the same from a different angle showing the basketball courts. We're still at Nystrom.
Can you slow it down a little bit? We don't even get a chance to see it. Yeah. Give us a couple seconds to see it.
Sorry. Shade structure. As you see, the temporary housing in the back. Similar project was for Coronado, to start the Coronado news project. It was also a rush. The project must be completed summertime as well. This is a photo of the temporary housing and the playground. Library.
Can you tell the folks where the temporary campus is at? Some people may not know.
Sure. As some of us know, that the temporary campus for Coronado, it took place on the Kennedy High School site. It's in the back side of the field. We isolated the old softball field. We kind of fenced it out, segregated it, made it separate. And we put the temporary campus on it so we can house the students for Coronado. We providing busing services for children as well. This is one of the classrooms been set with the furniture in. The computer lab. One of our quick projects for summer also, we thought to have a very quick head start for the bathroom renovation. This is a photo of the Mira Vista Elementary School bathrooms. Murphy, Sheldon Elementary School, and in the process of completing this bathroom down at Elahorst. We also have started quite a bit of work on the Elahorst roof, and quite a bit of progress there. The project are on time. This specific project did not need to be completed before kids start. It will be completed before the rainy season for sure. That will conclude my report, and open for any questions.
Yeah, can you tell them about De Anza?
Use the microphone, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, sir. I just think it's important to talk about, a significant project. De Anza wasn't included in the report, and I know that this is being televised, so you might want to talk about it.
You're right, Mr. Ramsey, and for the sake of knowing that we have a limited time today, I only focus on the project that was supposed to be started in the summer, finished in the summer. That's why I was only focused on Nystrom Coronado. Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, there's a great progress. The contractor started working, doing the hard scapes, and he's starting the and he's starting the landscapes as well. I will have a good chunk of my report for the next meeting to show you what the ends look like in the inside now.
Yeah, and for our residents out in Hercules, that alone is also up and running. So I just want to make sure the viewers know that that's also going forward too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Chair recognizes Vet Rico.
With regard to Elforce, how long ago was that school remodeled?
How long ago?
Yeah.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
So the roof wasn't replaced at the time?
No, it was just, remember that first phase of projects under the 1A program, they just didn't do the level of upkeep and upgrades that we're seeing now with the project. That was the first foray into it. That's why they're redoing the bathrooms as well in a lot of these schools. Those are the 1A schools like Stewart, Mira Vista, Harding, those Lincoln, those projects were just in the first round of schools, and the scope and the programs have changed subsequent to that.
Is there anything further, Mr. Abdallah?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to move to C1 public comment, please and thank you.
We got 5 minutes left.
I recognize Anton Younger for 3 minutes. Yes.
Anton Young here. Based on Mr. Ramsey's comment, it's my understanding that one, the district will request by August 21 a 90-day extension to reply to the grand jury report, and that two, the staff will prepare a draft response for review by the CBOC at their September 19th, 2012 meeting. Is my understanding correct?
That's just my recommendation. One thing I do want to ask, though, Dr. Harder, when you make the request for the night, can that be denied? Can they tell you no, that it has to be submitted, or is that just a matter of perfunctory due course? Do they have a say in whether or not that has to be finalized or not?
We will call and ask all those questions and bring up the errors in some of the documentation and wrap it up in the package and get back to the chair.
And also, finally, if the next CBOC meeting is September
26th.
Right, okay, it's not September 19th.
Right, no, September 26th. I would like to bring this meeting to a close with that note that our next meeting will be on September 26th. We will hold elections at that time. Charles Ramsey.
I just want to thank all of you members. You're doing an excellent job. You make us really proud that we have a committee that's functioning well and taking their commitment seriously. So I just really wanted to thank you for being part of this process and helping in terms of making sure that bond dollars are spent wisely and efficiently. And I disagree with some comments saying that an oversight committee is not really independent. I think this is a very independent oversight committee that's given a lot of time and effort and do make their feelings known. So thank you for your service, and I appreciate all you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you.
I'd like to bring this meeting to order, or to close. It is now 7:19. Please and thank you. Have a good night.